Your daily fix of women's mixed martial arts from the UFC, Invicta FC, Bellator, and one championship. Be in the loop, because Golden State Media Concepts got you covered. Get your fix on women's MMA with Got You Covered on Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Women's MMA Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Arnell D'Elliott, and hopefully your day is going awesome and well. Wherever you are, whoever you are, hopefully your day is going well. Things in 2021 are kind of picking up. A lot of things happening in the month of January, a whole lot of things, whether it be political or the world of sports. For those of you who don't know, in the world of basketball, they have people already in their shows. In sporting events, generally, we got people in the shows. We have fans attending to football games. We got fans attending to basketball games. I told this last week I studied in San Francisco, Northern California area, and last time I visited my family, which was I think like a week and a half ago, I started visiting my family up in Northern California. We didn't go into any Warriors game, but instead we went to a Sacramento Kings game. I don't know why, because I think my dad was like, alright, Kings games, they're a lot more cheaper than Warriors games, so let's go to the Kings games. So we ended up going to the Kings games, and it turns out that you can go in. You can go to these shows. We got fans in attendance of multiple basketball teams across California, including Florida. I think California, we're still hesitant on that. The LA Lakers and LA Clippers are not having fans. But as I am saying this, it feels so awesome. I didn't mention this in the last week's podcast, but it feels so awesome knowing that we got fans in attendance for these fights. Because the Max Holloway vs. Calvin Kattar fight, that fight wouldn't be as fun to watch if it wasn't for the fact that we had fans in the audience. So I just want to mention right now that it's fun to have fans, to have people going out there making some noise, being loud, because there's nothing wrong having fans in attendance making some noise and cheering and booing certain fighters. Now, with that being the way, let's go talk about this UFC card here, which is UFC Fight Night. Michael Chiesa versus Neil Magny. That was the fight card, and we had one women's fight in the main card, and it involves one of my personal favorites in Roxanne Medafferi versus Vivian Araujo. So Roxanne Medafferi, the best way to explain her was when I found a YouTube comment of her in a recent interview she did, and it was her talking about Fight Island stuff, and she was wearing her glasses, and someone in the comment section said, Roxanne Medafferi is your local librarian. And then more people put down, it's like, yeah, nicest girl in the world, super cool, super charming, sweet, simple to talk to, not a try-hard, fun, but she can go kick your butts. And on MMA on Points, they made a list of like top 10 nicest fighters in all of mixed martial arts. And number one was Wonderboy Stephen Thompson. Number 2 was Roxanne Medafferi. And I'm like, yeah, I love Roxanne Medafferi. She's great. Her defeating Macy Barber has to be one of the biggest upsets ever in UFC history. And Roxanne Medafferi, she's 25-19 in her MMA career, but she currently has a losing record. I think she's -1. Yeah, she's -1 in terms of her win-loss record in the UFC. But overall MMA career, she's 25-19. Proper journeyman fighter here. Super likable. Vivian Araujo, one of the best kickboxers and close-range fighters in all of mixed martial arts, especially in the women's light division. Vivian Araujo is one of those fighters who looks like she would seamlessly fight in the women's strawweight division. Without a doubt. Vivian Araujo, I think she's too small. I think she's too small for the women's fight division. I also think Roxanne Medafferi is too slow for the fight division also. I think Roxanne Medafferi is a natural bantamweight, but if she were to compete at bantamweight, it would be very difficult for Roxanne Medafferi, and she wouldn't have that size advantage she normally does against other opponents. Because Roxanne Medafferi's fighting style, for those of you who don't know, who don't watch a lot of Medafferi fights, is that she's like a walking tank. She's like a walking tank who deceptively has like 99 overall in endurability and defense. That's how I explain Roxanne Medafferi, in the sense that although she's not the most prettiest fighter in terms of when you watch her, she's pulling off all these cool looking moves or cool looking strikes. She's kind of a sloppy fighter, but because of that sloppiness, there's a weird charm to it, kind of like Justin Gaethje. I say Roxanne Medafferi is the female version of Justin Gaethje. You got this proper warrior here, high durability, high defense, not the most prettiest fighter to watch in terms of like fighting techniques, but she'll make any fight a complete scrapyard fight. and it never is boring. And in this bout here between Medafferi and Vivian Araujo, with Vivian Araujo, who by the way ends up winning this fight via unanimous decision, this is a proper scrap fight. It really was. High volume of striking coming from both ends, and Vivian Araujo, she just maximized her kick. This is a complete kickboxing and Muay Thai showcase for Vivian Araujo, throwing in forearms, elbow strikes, a large array of kicks. She did the keep away strategy onto Modafferi, while Modafferi, kind of like a Korean zombie, just pushing forward, eating all these shots. And I guess that's one issue with Modafferi, is the sense that she really is an all-around MMA fighter, kind of like Michelle Waterson. And she kind of is in the same boat as Michelle Waterson, in that you're a fighter that you know is definitely good enough to compete amongst the top 10 in your respective division. Michelle Waterson, she can compete with the very best. She can compete with rank 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. She can beat any fighter who's outside the top 10. That's how good Michelle Waterson is. And for Roxanne Medafferi, it's the same thing. Roxanne Medafferi can go out there and pull off a random upset victory onto people that many expected to go defeat her. So that's Medafferi. Roxanne Medafferi is her entire career is pretty much this huge underdog story where she really shouldn't be here, but she is. And there's a weird charm about that. But Roxanne Medafferi, her being kind of a sloppy, ugly, trash, scrapyard fighter, always pushing forward. Her defense is very questionable. Her head movement is very questionable. Her striking is very scary to watch at times. In the sense that Vivian Araujo, she will land these perfectly clean strikes, go ahead hunting on Modafferi. And since Modafferi isn't that fast of a fighter, she'll just take these shots. But then Modafferi's just going to immediately pressure you and go for a counterpunch immediately. And she'll go with these counter hits that only upon taking shots to the face and putting yourself in a bad situation will you find the openings to go and get these shots in. That's Roxanne Medafferi. Vivian Araujo, clean 3-jab combination onto Modafferi's face. Modafferi just eats these punches in the face, lands one clean right hand on Araujo. Araujo gets a knockdown in. It's a fun fight, a fun scrapyard fight, an entire night that was full of close battles. In my opinion, the two best fights of this entire show, this UFC Fight Night show with Chiesa and Magny, I say it was Matt Schnell. Okay, so Matthew Christopher Schnell versus Tyson Nam, along with Roxanne Medafferi and Vivian Araujo, were, in my opinion, the two best fights of the night. They're the two best fights of the night, and with the way how the fight was going between Modafferi and Araujo, if that bout were to continue on, and it were to go to a 4th round or a 5th round, Modafferi could have won. Even though Modafferi was getting pummeled by the end of things, Vivian Araujo was at side control position on Roxanne Medafferi in the final 45 seconds of the 3rd round, laying in these vicious hammer fists. But up to that point, though, Vivian Araujo, she looks gassed, man. She's proper gas. So the volume of strikes just slowly whittles down as the fight whittles down. Vivian Araujo's striking volume just whittles down, and Araujo starts making a lot of mistakes against Modafferi. So there are many things that Araujo has to go work on, in the sense that she has to go work on her cardio, and she has to be able to be consistent through all rounds of action, because first round was Araujo picking apart Modafferi, expert striking. And then we got to the 2nd and 3rd round. It was kind of the same here, but Modafferi was more durable, and it's left Araujo in many positions where she ended up being counter hits. She ends up getting counter hit on, and then she gets knocked down, or she gets put in a situation where if Modafferi was just a more dangerous striker, if you replace Valentina Shevchenko with Roxanne Medafferi, and they both laid out a similar type of strike onto Vivian Araujo, if it was Valentina, she would have got knocked out. If it was Kim Chikagian, or even just Guy, she would get knocked out. That's how bad of a situation Viviana Araujo put herself in. But she was able to come away with the W, so good on her for that. In terms of the fight stats here, Roxanne Medafferi, she landed 49 of 193 attempted strikes. Landed 46 of 184 significant strikes. She attempted 5 takedowns. She didn't get any of them because every time Roxanne Medafferi would attempt a takedown, Vivian Araujo would go and use the momentum of Medafferi, reverse it, and place her down. That's why Araujo is 4 of 4 in her takedown attempts. And Vivian Araujo, she landed 100 of 214 total strikes. That's 47%. 20% difference compared to Roxanne Medafferi's 25%. Vivian Araujo also landed 86 of 198 significant strikes, and that was plus 40 in significant strikes and a plus 18% in terms of striking percentages. So Vivian Araujo had a really strong showcase against Modafferi. Really good showing there. Modafferi is definitely going to be one of those fighters, without a doubt about it, where, contrary to her record, she will remain with the UFC. Every time you see her, she's pulling off these fun fights, and whenever you see a Roxanne Medafferi fight, you expect nothing but fireworks. So yeah, even in the interviews here, I'm looking at it. She's like, "Yeah, I'm trying to start a winning streak, man. It's gonna be fun and all that stuff." Yeah, so I'm happy for them. But what does it make the current UFC's flyweight division? Well, going up, we have Valentina Shevchenko being the champion. We're not sure on who is going to face Valentina. It could be Jessica Andrade. It could be Lauren Murphy. So, from my guess right now, we could see Jessica Andrade versus Lauren Murphy. They're going to go compete for a number of contenders bout. We'll face Valentina Shevchenko at some point in this year. So, Valentina, she has to fight once a year, right? That's what she normally does. It just, okay, I'll go in depth about why I have problems with Valentina Shevchenko and her current title run. I'll do that after the commercial break, but right now, Andrade, Lauren Murphy, they could potentially be next in line against Valentina. Killian Chukagian, honestly, at this point here, I have no clue who Killian Chukagian is going to face. She defeated Anthony Shevchenko, who was ranked outside the top 10, fought against Jessica Andrade, who was not even ranked in the UFC's women's fight division, and then fought Cynthia Calvillo, who was at one point the 4th ranked fighter in the UFC women's fight division. But Cynthia Calvillo, before she became the 4th ranked fighter, was an unranked fighter the year of. So I have no clue who Kim could face. She could fight against an unranked fighter. She could fight against another fighter in a different division. We're not really sure. Speaking of Anthony Shevchenko, she got herself back to being ranked number 11th. Because last time I checked this, so I look at my rankings through rankingsmma.com, because if you go to the normal UFC rankings, their rankings sometimes kind of outdated, and also they only show some fighters within the top 15. It's not updated all the time. So I look at rankingsmma.com for the UFC rankings. So Cynthia Calvillo, she's currently ranked number 7. We're unsure about her future right now. There was a lot of hype for Cynthia Calvillo. I was really hyped for Cynthia. She had a dominant, amazing performance against Jessica Ai. But then Killian Chukagian, she really maximized her size and range over Calvillo. Calvillo is somebody who, if she was in the UFC Stride division, she would be a better version of Carla Esparza. I'm that high on Cynthia. She right now is just coming off a loss against Killian Chukagian. And for Cynthia Calvillo here, she might be tested yet again. She might be facing against Antonina. If I was the booker, I would book Cynthia Calvillo versus Anthony Shevchenko, and the winner of that bout will be cemented in the top 10. Because Cynthia Calvillo right now, if she loses, she's outside the top 10. If Anthony wins, then she's in the top 10. So that's a big fight for both fighters. I believe both Antonina and Cynthia Calvillo have to go through a 3-fight win streak in order to get back into the top 5 rankings or be near in discussion of fight for a title, which sucks. Because if Cynthia Calvillo were to defeat Killian Chukagian, she would be in the mix of Andrade and Lauren Murphy. So because of this one loss against Killian Chukagian, Calvillo has to go on another strong win streak, and she might not be in the top 5 again for maybe another 2 years. So that's a really upsetting for Cynthia Calvillo, because she's a fighter who I believe has the tools to defeat Valentina Shevchenko. I do believe so. I think her boxing was very off. And it wasn't good at all when she fought against Killian Chukagian. Her wrestling, she was easily stuffed by Killian Chukagian, which is upsetting because, all the tools are there. Alright, then she's got all the skills, it's just she's not able to put it together. She was able to put it together in her fight against Jessica Ai. She wasn't able to do so in her fight against Chukagian. So that's upsetting. I think Cynthia Calvillo, she's got a bright future ahead of her. I won't be surprised if she gets back into the top 5 in 2 years' time. And Antonina Shevchenko, her run in the UFC is very rough. She came with a whole lot of fanfare. She lost 2 of her bouts. So she definitely does want to go and get this victory. I know the UFC wants to book an Antonina versus Valentina fight. I think that would be stellar to watch. The narratives would be great. The fight in itself would be fun. And also, that's a fight you can easily market. Younger sister champion faces against older sister, the challenger. That's a fun narrative. That's a fun fight. You can go and have a strong, interesting narrative for fight fans. And also, it'll be interesting to see her. Who better to know Valentina Shevchenko than her older sister? So you're listening to the GSMC Women's MMA Podcast. Coming back after a short break here. See you soon.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info. Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
And we are back. And so, looking down the UFC's fight division right now for the women, we have a lot of great matchups here. First off, Jessica Ai versus Joanne Calderwood coming up January 24. Macy Barber versus Alexa Grasso coming up February 13. Marina Rodriguez versus Amanda Ribas coming up also January 24. And then we have Jillian Robertson facing against Miranda Maverick. They'll be competing at the February UFC 258 event, along with Montana Del Rosa versus Mariana Bueno Silva, and Laura Procario against Molly McMahon coming up on February 6. We got Alexis Davis coming up February 27 against Sabina Mazo. And then Casey O'Neill versus Shayna Dobson coming up on February 20. Those are the fights lined up for the women's fight division. Oh my gosh, in the next 2 months, these rankings are going to be far off and be much more different right now. I'm incredibly excited for the Marina Rodriguez versus Amanda Ribas fights. I think that fight can definitely be a fight of the night contender. Actually, I say right now, Amanda Ribas versus Marina Rodriguez, which is the opening fight, I think it's the opening fight, the opening fight for UFC 257, Conor McGregor versus Poirier. Without a doubt, that fight should have the highest volume of strikes among 3 rounds among all fights in the UFC of that night. At least that's what I believe. I think we're going to see more action in Ribas versus Rodriguez more than any other fight in that card other than the main event, because the main event is going through 5 rounds. So based on the time accumulated, they might have more strikes. But Marina Rodriguez versus Amanda Ribas, from stylistically wise, it's a mirror fight. That's how I see it. We got 2 fighters here, both high-level kickboxers, both high-level strikers going at it. And I would have to put Amanda Ribas. I would give her the advantage in the sense that her grappling and wrestling ability is better than Marina Rodriguez. Though, let's not forget about Marina Rodriguez in her performance against Carla Esparza. Now, in that bout, Carla Esparza, she fought very reckless in that bout. We have Carla Esparza, who normally is the type of fighter who would go for a double leg takedown and just control you on the ground for most of the fight. Instead, what Carla Esparza did was she'd go for a double leg takedown and she'd go try for reckless things like try to go for some overhand ground and pound action when she really shouldn't, and she left her arm open, and it led to reversal opportunities for Marina. It led to Carla Esparza trying to go for submission holds, trying to go for the backpack position, trying to go for rear naked chokes, for a single leg key locks, for arm bars. And Esparza, I'm not going to say Esparza is not a competent submission specialist or a submission grappler, But she's the type of fighter who she grapples you and then she pins you down. She doesn't grapple you and ground and pound or grapple you in submission. She grapples you and then she keeps you there. But Marina, man, she was a proper warrior here. Like a proper worm going at it against Carla Esparza here. That fight was, they were fighting at such a high volume in that bout. There was never 10 seconds where it looked like Esparza was pinning down Marina Rodriguez and Rodriguez was just there stationary. Because usually in a wrestler versus striking battle, the wrestler gets a takedown in and the striker is just there on the ground motionlessly. Like they're trying to do their best to get up, but they're not making any progress at all. That usually is how it goes for wrestlers versus strikers. But for Marina, she kept fighting in. She kept fighting. She kept fighting out of it. She kept getting up multiple times against Esparza, who I continually say is the best wrestler among all fighters in the UFC Women's Strawweight division. I always say that. And then we have Amanda Ribas here, who's a great striker, like a really darn good striker, really darn good kickboxer, and her wrestling ability not in the same level as Carla Esparza, but is competent enough. And if you're to say, okay, who wins in the striking here? Moreno Rodriguez. Who wins in the grappling? Amanda Ribas. But it's not by that much. Not by a significant margin. Do not be surprised if Amanda Ribas, she could take down in on Moreno Rodriguez, and Moreno just gets up, reverses her, and Moreno Rodriguez ends up being the person who's doing ground and pound onto Ribas. Don't be surprised if that happens. Also, in the other end of the spectrum, do not be surprised if Amanda Ribas ends up knocking out Marina. That could be a real possibility. Amanda Ribas is a very underrated striker, and here's the thing, she went toe-to-toe against Mackenzie Dern. And although Mackenzie Dern's, her striking is take it or leave it, whatever, alright, then sometimes it's really darn good as an elite level top 5 striking, and sometimes it's very ugly and she just has to resort on her natural ground game. And the fact that Ribas was able to go and grapple with something like Mackenzie Dern and was even able to go and toe-to-toe in the striking exchanges, don't be surprised if Ribas can handle herself in the striking against Marina, and there could be a real possibility. I'm going to go predict right now. Both of these women, they're gonna probably attempt somewhere in the ballpark of, I'm thinking it's obviously well over 200. Well over 200. 300. Both these women independently are gonna attempt 300 total strikes, and they're both gonna land over 100 signature strikes. It is the fight that will have the highest pace amongst all fights in the UFC 257 card here. I know, it sounds like I'm hyping up that card, and trust me, I'm not just hyping it up because it's my job to report on women's MMA. No, that fight is probably the most balanced fight between two fighters who are perfect for one another to go deliver an exciting, awesome bout. Don't be surprised if those two go at it and they end up having one of the best fights of the entire run in UFC Fight Island in the next week. And so with a whole lot of action happening in the UFC's women's fight division, what's going on with the champion? What's going on with the champion here, Valentina Shevchenko? So, coming up in just, this week, Jessica Ai, Joanne Calderwood, they're the undercard. They're fighting before Ribas and Marina Rodriguez. And I just saw an interview with Joanne Calderwood where she ended up saying that she really does regret giving up her title fight, her title opportunity, because here's the thing, she was the number one contender. Now it's just going to draw out Lauren Murphy. But before then, it was Jennifer Maia, and then before Jennifer Maia, it was Joanne Calderwood. And it was really upsetting. I felt like the UFC really did Joanne Calderwood wrong here. She was the number one contender for Valentina Shevchenko, and Joanne Calderwood was like, I'm ready to go. She was number one contender in the beginning of 2020. Beginning, as in January 2020, Joanne Calderwood was the number one contender. And then it took her, and then 10 months later, then Valentina had a title fight. So what happened here? So, Joanne Calderwood, She was like, I want to fight against the champion. I want to fight against the champion. But Valentina Shevchenko, she was off filming a movie for Halle Berry. She's trying to rehab through 2 injuries. Valentina is also very skeptical on the whole COVID thing right now. She's like, should I fight, should I not fight? Which is understandable. But there are so many things going against the direction of Joanne Calderwood that it is perfectly understandable as to, I understand it. I understand why Joanne Calderwood gave up her normal contendership to Jennifer Maia. And when I say gave up, I meant there was no reason why Joanne Calderwood should have accepted a matchup against Jennifer Maia other than financial purposes. Because Joanne Calderwood, she's like, it makes sense. Why should Joanne Calderwood fight against anybody but the champion? Well, guess what? Joanne Calderwood, she needs money. She only fought once in the year of 2020, and that was against Jennifer Maia. And the only reason she fought against Jennifer Maia was because Valentina Shevchenko was unavailable, and Jennifer Maia, on her rankings, because I think she was just barely in the top 10. No one wanted to fight against Jennifer Maia. You know why? Because Maia, she is a threat, and B, her ranking could kind of like come to Chimaev, where you don't want to fight him because you're not rewarded anything except for finances by beating him, but you have a lot to lose. That's the problem with Khamzat Chimaev, in the sense that you really don't want to fight him because there's an asterisk if you beat him, and if you don't beat him, it looks bad on you. And that was Jennifer Maia in a nutshell. So Joanne Calder was like, okay, Valentina, she's unavailable. She's not going to fight me for all these reasons: injury rehab, movie, promoting the movie, COVID, and then her agents giving weird mix. Also, Valentina Shevchenko, during this time, was like, I want to fight against Amanda Nunes. She was trying to buy her way into getting a Amanda Nunes fight, even though it was booked already that we were going to have Megan Anderson versus Nunes for the UFC featherweight title. Not only that, Jermaine Durandame, she's been waiting for her title fight for a while. So it's ridiculous for Valentina to be like, you know what, I want to be next in line to fighting against Amanda Nunes when you already have a challenger in Joanne Calderwood. That's, what the heck? So Joanne Calderwood, she fights against Jennifer Maia. Jennifer Maia defeats Joanne Calderwood. And now Joanne Calderwood, now she's going to fight against Jessica Ai. And Jessica Ai is coming off a win. And Jessica Ai is looking like we're seeing the best version of her before her injury. So Joanne Calderwood, her career right now is going through this downslope unless she pulls off a victory. Actually, both Jessica Ai and Joanne Calderwood, currently in their respective careers, are both going through downslopes because just like Joanne Calderwood, Jessica Ai was a top contender for the title. And then she went on a losing streak. I still remember, there were discussions going on oh man, Jessica Ai, she's got all the tools to beat Valentina Shevchenko. And now, in her UFC career, she's 5-7. Jessica Ai is 5-7 in her UFC career. She's got a 15-8 record, good on for that. But her UFC career doesn't look all that well. And if you look at the UFC women's fight division, a lot of the rankings, a lot of the records just don't look well. Joanne Calderwood, coming off a loss. Jessica Ai, 5-7. Jessica Andrade, she had one victory in her entire career as a UFC women's flyweight. One victory gets her to be number 2 ranked in the division. Killing Chukagian, she's stuck playing journeyman. She has to go, Chukagian, Ai, and Calderwood, most of these women, with the exception of a couple few like Macy Barber, Ribas, and Marina Rodriguez, and kind of Anthony Shevchenko, they have to go through this huge winning streak in order for them to go get title fights. And by the way, Joanne Calderwood, she's currently ranked number 10. She was stuck for 10 consecutive months as the number one contender for Valentina Shevchenko, being ranked number 2. And she ended up losing the contendership to Jennifer Maia. And it turns out that if Joanne Calderwood just waited for 2 more months, then Valentina Shevchenko would have been ready for a fight. But even then, I'm not sure. I'm not really sure. Because we didn't even know Valentina Shevchenko would even fight in the year of 2020. It was only until after the Jennifer Maia and Joanne Calderwood fight did people know that Shevchenko was perfectly fine fighting? And now, I'm skeptical here. I'm not the biggest conspiracy theorist in the world here, but I'm just saying, from my perspective, from the way how I see things, what I believe happened here was Valentin Shevchenko didn't want to fight against Joanne Calderwood because, and it's not because Shevchenko was scared of Joanne Calderwood, it was more of a sense of, it was not a fight, it was a risky fight. A, it's a risky fight. B, Joanne Calderwood just doesn't bring enough viewers. She's not really a big name. She just isn't, though. I would argue Jennifer Maia is more of a bigger name than Joanne Calderwood, even though both of them don't really have the best records here. But Jennifer Maia has had higher placement in her match cards over Joanne Calderwood in the past 2 years. Even though Jennifer Maia and Joanne Calderwood, their records aren't all that good. Maia 3-3, Calderwood 6-5. I believe from Shevchenko's standpoint, from Shevchenko's perspective here, she accepted the fight against Jennifer Maia because she believed it would be an easier matchup for her. It'd be an easier matchup. You're fighting against somebody who just recently fought. You just saw her fight. You have more time to prep up. So I think Shevchenko, she took the easy way out fighting against Jennifer Maia instead of accepting the bout against Joanne Calderwood. But then again, remember, she also was going through injury rehab. She was going through shooting a movie. She was second-guessing herself of whether she should even fight. But it's very upsetting to know that Joanne Calderwood, if she just waited just 2 more months, could have fought for the title. And now, she went from being the number 2 best fighter in the UFC Women's Fight Division to now the 10th best fighter in the UFC Women's Fight Division. And it'll take a big win streak, probably a 3-fight win streak, in order for Joanne Calderwood and Jessica Ai to go be a contender yet again. You're listening to the GSMC Women's MMA Podcast, coming back after the short break. See you soon.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play. This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
And we are back. And so I'll be discussing the fight between Sarah Moras and Vanessa Melo. Their fight came in at the UFC on ABC event, with Max Holloway and Calvin Kattar being the main event. I'll be discussing that along with the main event, which was the main event of the prelims, technically, which was a women's bantamweight bout between Yana Wu and Joselyne Edwards. But first off, Sarah Moras versus Vanessa Melo here. I gotta look at the fight stats here. So, Sarah Moras, she landed 44 of 200 total strikes. She landed only 22% of her strikes. Significant strikes, same thing, 22%, 44 of 200. She is really good at clinching and at the takedowns, but she really didn't do any of that. No, she attempted one takedown, and Vanessa Melo was able to stuff it, then just throw her to the side here. But for the most part here, in the 3 rounds, probably there's only a 6-second spur of actual grappling happening. Other than just 6 seconds of the 15 minutes, for the most part, this was a striking battle. And while Sarah Moras, she only landed 22% of her strikes, Vanessa Melo, she landed 56 of 169, 33% of her strikes, and the same thing also applies for her significant strikes. Now, Vanessa Melo was able to win this bout via unanimous decision, and this certainly was a very difficult fight to judge. And it was hard to determine who actually won this bout. And this bout here, I hear it all the time, alright? Don't leave it in the hands of the judges, because it's just accepted that in UFC, the judges suck. Like, they're not good. It's just a thing you just have to accept. Alright then, if the fight goes to the judges, the people who are going to decide the fate of these fighters, of their fight purses, of their win-loss record, it's on the hands of incompetent people. Okay, now that that's out of the way, for this fight, this was such a difficult fight to judge. And if you were to hand this over to 100 people, and then they come to a conclusion, and then you show them again the fights to the same 100 people, they'll probably change their minds. And it wasn't even really a back and forth battle here, because the best way to explain this bout here really was, okay, so first off, Vanessa Melo, she won the bout. Alright then, she won the bout via unanimous decision. And it was like 29-20, like 29-28, 29-28, and then 30-27. And I'm looking at this fight, and me myself, I had to look at this fight multiple times. So, to best explain Melo versus Moras, it was, imagine like this high octane, high volume striker who's punching, like, who isn't really doing that much damage at all. I'd say Vanessa Melo, she walked away from this battle pretty much unscathed. She got hit in the face like 44 times, but for the most part, she comes away unscathed. Which is weird that there's only a 31 punch difference between the two, because this fight, for all 3 rounds of action, pretty much, alright, two fighters meet in the center of the octagon. Vanessa Melo is chasing Sarah Moras, and Sarah Moras is just poking Melo over and over and over again with these quick jabs. And Vanessa Melo, at times, would land a clean right overhand. And that was the fight in a nutshell. It really was. Just Vanessa Melo chasing Sarah Moras constantly sidestepping, moving at a horizontal plane here. And I've said this before, I believe it is incredibly important for fighters to be able to move at a horizontal plane instead of just vertical. I think there are too many fighters who go vertical and just do headhunting. And this is a tale of the tape here. We have Vanessa Melo being a headhunter, moving only in a vertical plane, chasing after Sarah Moras, while Sarah Moras is bouncing all over the octagon. I swear she's like done like maybe 20 laps, like within the octagon. And I'm looking at this fight, and I'm like, okay, I like how Sarah Moras is striking. The problem though here is that her striking isn't good enough, or she isn't that dangerous of a striker for Vanessa Melo to care at all about Moras' striking. And Daniel Cormier, in the final 5 minutes, just went off for like 5 consecutive minutes. He was like, I don't get what Sarah Moras is doing. She's like them and Dan Hardy were hypercritical of Moras. They're saying, I don't get what Moras is doing. She's just jabbing her, but she's not even doing any damage. She's doing little to any damage because she's throwing out these like left and right jabs that's not even connecting with Vanessa Melo. She's primarily just using these punches in order to stop Vanessa Melo from pursuing forward, and she's like punching her arm, her hands, and are being blocked all the time. Like, I still say this, Sarah Moras, for as many strikes as she did in this fight here, did little to nothing in terms of damage. And it was the same thing over again. She tried to do this thing where she's going for these like low kicks. There's these like low kicks to the left knee of Vanessa Melo, and then going in for like a feint, then a quick left jab, and then backing away. That's all that Sarah Moras did. But even then, her kicks didn't do anything. It was mostly like, okay, so this happens in like when I do NBA or when you do basketball. Sorry for bringing up basketball here, but it makes sense. So in basketball, there's a player named Dirk Nowitzki, and what he does to make sure that his opponent or the opposing player is coming at him, to make sure that player doesn't come after him and block his shots, he raises his like right knee up in front of his chest, which gives spacing towards him and his opponent, giving Dirk Nowitzki enough space to go and make his jump shot. So the knee is not at all landing to his actual opponents. The knee is risen up in front of the chest of Dirk Nowitzki purely as a way to kind of push away their opponents. Like, whenever I see Dirk Nowitzki, whenever he throws up his knee out there, he never has contact with the opposing player coming at him. It's always just used to distance himself and the other player. And that's what Sarah Moras did. She just kept throwing her leg up as a way to create distance between herself and her opponent in Vanessa Melo. Problem, though, is that this is a fight. This is a fight, and she's playing keep away in this fight here. And for a lot of people, fighters who do the keep away strategy of like, you poke and run out, poke and run out, poke and run out, it's very infuriating. It's not a fun way to go watch fighting. You see these fighters to go fight. And I'm not saying you can't be a calculating fighter who's trying to find the right angles and trying to pinpoint the right shots to go find new good clean looks. No. It's not like that for this fight. Because while we do have fighters out there who are good precise strikers and angling shots like Dan Hooker and Dustin Poirier fights, or a lot of fights that happen in the lightweight and featherweight division like Max Holloway versus Alex Volkanovski. That fight was just two people like with high fight IQs striking with one another, angling off, finding the right shots, moving at a horizontal plane, trying to figure out where the good openings are. Okay, Sarah Moras half-heartedly did that because she's like copying the movements of Holloway and Volkanovski. It's very similar to Alexander Hernandez in that aesthetically, what you're doing is right. You're pulling off these like really good. You have really good footwork. All right, then you have really good footwork. You're moving at a horizontal plane. You're at times finding some good shots, but because she's such a no threat in striking, and because she's like not overcommitting herself to any striking, it looks like Vanessa Melo is just powering through and is not even taking even just a little bit of damage. If there was a health bar on the top right screen for Vanessa Melo, I can guarantee you it ain't budging at all. And from the judges' perspective, they're like, okay, you're hitting her, but you're doing so little that there's no way that I can conceivably say that you're beating her in this fight. Because for every like 6 jabs that hits the air, or just barely touches Vanessa Melo ends up hitting good clean shots. And when you look at the fight stats here, there's no way Sarah Moras landed enough total strikes for it to warrant like, alright, Moras should control the fight here through her jabbing and through her striking accuracy. No. There are a lot of fighters who try to win fights based on striking accuracy. And I always say this, you have to judge a fight based on both the fight stats and by the eye test. And the eye test say, alright then, Vanessa Melo won this fight. Because, unlike all the strikes that Sarah Moras is doing here, all the strikes Vanessa Melo is doing actually matters. Like, yeah, Sarah Moras might land like 4 consecutive punches to Melo, and they're not even combinations. Sarah Moras is not pulling off any combinations in this bout, other than if you count those very weak leg kicks. That's not even really a leg kick, just you raising your leg and you just pushing away your opponents. Like, she pulls off low to no combinations here, even though she's the one who's trying to like gain points and garner points based on striking accumulation. Meanwhile, Vanessa Melo, despite the fact that she attempted 31 less strikes, landed 12 more strikes. Which means in both the eye test and in the fight stats, Vanessa Melo is winning. Vanessa Melo was obviously winning this bout here, and it really did surprise me when, like, Bruce Buffer, he comes in, alright, the referee, he's holding both the arms of the two fighters, and then it was announced that Vanessa Melo won, and Sarah Moras, she gave the proper shock face, and I immediately thought of Michelle Watterson in her bout with Carlos Esparza. And they both fought very similarly, except like Watterson just did a little bit more better. But they fought similarly in the sense that you're both poking. You're poking, all right then, good. But you're doing so little damage with your poking that it is hard from the judge's perspective to be like, all right then, yes, you are landing some strikes, but those strikes are so weak, and they're so not affecting at all Melo. Here's the thing. I wouldn't be surprised if Melo were doing an interview and she says, yeah, I am more tired and more beat up of me attempting punches than I am actually being punched. Like the cardio bar, if there's a health bar and a cardio bar is being drained while the health bar is like barely even budgeting. That's how I saw it. And you know what? Sarah Moras, she is now, upon losing this fight, is 6-8. She is 6-8. She's 6-8. Vanessa Melo is 11-8. And also one thing I would like from this fight. So I would like to see Vanessa Melo and Moras also, the next time they fight, they better be a lot more aggressive. And I'm not saying be overly aggressive to the point where you end up being caught by your opponents. No. I'm not really saying that. It just, it does bother me. It really does. Where there are a lot of fighters out there, like the Alexander Hernandez, Ciara Eubanks, Moraz, Vanessa Melo, these type of fighters who on paper are doing the right things, but they lack that power and that overcommitment, that there's an obvious low ceiling on top of them. Because Moraz and Melo, they fought good enough to win the bouts, but no one can be like, oh man, they fought good enough to raise their stock. Because they didn't. This fight here was not a good showcase of Sarah Moras. It wasn't a good showcase of Vanessa Melo, because here's the thing. Vanessa Melo should have been way more confident in herself in her striking here. And Dan Hardy and Cormier were talking about this, where they're like, Vanessa Melo, she knows that these strikes are doing little to no damage on her. Why doesn't she just overcommit and push Sarah Moras? She should try something here. And why don't both of them try more of a variety of strikes here? Because these two ladies were not pulling off a variety of strikes. It was Vanessa Melo, right overhands, and Sarah Moras doing either like a quick jab that did very little to no damage. And the fight, all in all, which wasn't fun. I felt it was very repetitive. I felt like both fighters were fighting way too safe. I'm not saying that every fight should be like a bloodbath, but I like to see like some mix-up. Because it's not just me, also Dan Hardy and Daniel Cormier on commentary, they're like, these two are not really doing anything that much. Yes, Melo did win the fight, and she was able to clip the nose of Sarah Moras, and Sarah Moras was bleeding early on in the first round. Okay, I gotcha. But like, what stops Vanessa Melo from just going all aggro onto Moras? Because it's obvious that Vanessa Melo, she is quick enough to be able to go spot the grappling of Sarah Moras here and the takedowns. And the one instance that Melo was able to go steal the takedown from Moras, I felt very confident that she could do that multiple times over throughout the fight. Vanessa Melo should have been more aggressive in this bout here, and this could have been a lot more of an exciting fight to watch. You're listening to the GSMC Women's MMA Podcast. Come back after a short break here. See you soon.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
And we are back, and so let's discuss the main event of the prelims, which is Yana versus Joselyne Edwards. And this bout here was certainly fun. Fun in the sense that we got two. This is the exact opposite of Sarah Moras versus Vanessa Melo. So while Sarah Moras versus Vanessa Melo was a calculating fight between two fighters trying to go play it safe and not try for anything reckless, this bout here between Wu and Edwards, oh my goodness, it was proper rock'em sock'em robots here, and it was everything that the first women's fight was not. We got both these women here going out like throwing flying forearms, elbow smashes. Joselyne Edwards multiple times in this fight would go for a spinning right roundhouse kick and then go turn around for a spinning back kick, then goes back to a roundhouse kick again. It's weird. It's like a proper fighting game here where you got these two cool characters throwing out and spamming out these like really cool looking moves. Flying forearms, spinning back fists, reverse elbows, like spinning roundhouse kicks, reverse spinning kicks, like body shots. It was really fun to watch this. Joselyne Edwards fights as if she's like holding on the L1 and pressing the X button. If you ever play any of the UFC games, Yanan Wu. Oh my goodness! What I love about Yanan Wu here is the fact that although she does get pressured by Joselyne Edwards' pressure here, and that's what she did here. That's what it was. Joselyne Edwards kept putting so much pressure on Yanan Wu, and although Yanan Wu backed away multiple times in this fight, when she found counterpunches, she took whatever she had to the chin and made the most of it, and went for these vicious like combo strikes. Like Joselyne Edwards, she'd go in there, pull off a three punch combination, and most people would typically be like, "Okay, I'm hurt, back off." Instead, Yanan Wu, there are moments in this fight here where she just stays on her ground, she stays put, and then she just stands there, takes these shots, and then comes back with a couple counter hits and lands some good clean shots onto Joselyne Edwards. This was in the bantamweight bout, but I swear this fight felt like it could have been in the flyweights. I feel like this could have been a flyweight bout. I like to see both women compete at flyweight because I still believe that I think we would see a better version of both these women going into just like 10 pounds smaller than this division here in the bantamweight division. So let me pull out the fight stats here because these two gave a large array of strikes here. So Yanan Wu landed 70 of 148 total strikes, 47%. She also landed 58 of 129 significant strikes, which is 45%. I'm surprised here there was only one takedown in this bout, but she only had 1 of 2 takedowns. Joselyne Edwards, she landed 111 out of 206 total strikes, 88 of 178 significant strikes, which goes to 49%, and she was 0-3 takedowns, which is actually pretty misleading here, because in the first round, it was Yanan Wu, she pressures Joselyne Edwards. I say first round was given towards Yanan Wu. Yanan Wu, she pressures Joselyne Edwards. She does get a takedown in on Joselyne, but then Joselyne, for the better part of a minute and 25 seconds, was trying to go get a triangle choke from bottom position. So she tries to go for a triangle choke, and then Yanan Wu is able to get out of it. She does some ground and pound action on Edwards. Edwards is able to reverse out of the ground and pound action, does her own ground and pounding, then Yanan Wu reverses again. There was like 3 consecutive reversals that happened over the span of just like a minute and 50 seconds in the first round. High octane, fast paced action. And then we go to the second round here. So in the second round, Yanan Wu does attempt for a takedown, and it sucks here that it's not labeled as takedowns for Joselyne Edwards, as Yanan Wu, she goes in for another takedown. Joselyne Edwards uses the momentum of Yanan Wu, then throws her to the cage. Yanan Wu stumbles down, and Joselyne Edwards start doing some ground and pound. And one issue that Joselyne Edwards does have is that she is incapable of keeping her opponent onto the ground for a period of time, which is weird because she's got a really good jiu-jitsu background, and this mostly turned to a kickboxing bout with two fighters who didn't look like that they were really adept in fighting in the ground or in controlling their opponent, because whenever either of them got their opponent on the ground, it wasn't a case of, alright then, I'm going to go and try to find the right position here and try to move my way to mount position, because it wasn't like that. Usually when you see someone go for a takedown, they go for, okay, takedown, full guard, half guard, side control, then towards mount position, then they do some ground and pound from mount position, the other person that turns around, you go to backpack position, and you go for a rear naked choke. That's pretty much how a majority of wrestling bouts to go, whether or not you're a high-level grappler or a low level grappler. That's how typically most fights end up when someone gets for takedown. Instead, what is happening here is that both fighters would try to go for takedowns, then they would stumble, and it was like, oh, you know what? I don't need positioning. I don't need to fight. I don't even need to go go for a backpack position. I don't need to go to north-south. I don't even need to throw in some knees like when you're bottom. No. It's just, all right, you're in the ground. I'm going to throw this a large flurry of strikes from top position, even though I am actually not controlling you at all, and just you covering yourself up. That's what happened here. Both these women did not do a good job defending themselves when they're on the ground. It obviously showed that both women are overwhelmed when they are taken to the ground, and both women were very comfortable standing and just trading shots over and over again. Joselyne Edwards, she just had a little bit more in the gas tank over Yana Wu. So although Joselyne Edwards did end up winning this fight via unanimous decision, this was a back and forth bout, and I would love to see both these women go at it again. And better yet, I would love to see both these women go at it in the women's flyweight division. And so for the prelims, Sarah Moras versus Vanessa Melo, Yana Wu versus Joselyne Edwards. Both these fights, two very, very different fights. So we got one fight being very passive, very calculating. Sarah Moras poking Vanessa Melo stalking Sarah Moras, but not overcoming to anything and winning by points, versus an onslaught of two women playing Rock'em Sock'em Robots IRL with Yana Wu and Joselyne Edwards throwing out flying forearms and spinning reverse kicks. And there was actually one moment in this fight here where Yana Wu was able to stumble down Joselyne Edwards, and Joselyne Edwards is on the ground, and Joselyne Edwards throws out this big up kick, probably the biggest up kick I've seen in the UFC in terms of theatrics, because Joselyne Edwards, she hits she does an up kick onto Yana Wu's chest, and then Yana Wu just goes flying, her body just flails, and her arms are up. It looks very all cartoony looking, and you can hear the crowd, because in the beginning of the show the crowd was nearly non-existent, but in this fight here, the main event for the prelims, the crowd were constantly making noise, man. They were constantly making noise. They were always cheering, and by the end of it though, they gave a round of applause for these two women. So, once again, I'm happy for the crowd being there, and I'm happy for these two women giving a really good show for the crowd. Also, a quick shout out to Modafferi, who won her UFC debut. It was the first fight for the UFC Fight Night card that involved Michael Chiesa versus Neil Magny. So, the opening bout of the entire card, it was even before the prelims. So, it was Modafferi. She just dominated her opponent, Victoria Leonardo. A high volume of striking accuracy and power. She ended up winning the fight via second round TKO, to which she was pulling out these high velocity combinations, ending it off with the right high kick, stumbling her opponent, pressuring her up to the cage, throwing out even more combinations and winning the fight via TKO. Modafferi, upon being successful in her UFC debut, is officially 6-1 in her overall MMA career, so congratulations for her. Meanwhile, Leonardo, she drops down to 8-3, which honestly, it isn't really a bad thing. There are a lot of fighters. So this fight between Modafferi and Victoria Leonardo took place in the fight division, and if you look at the top 10 rankings of the fight division, about half of those women have about either a 5,500 win-loss record or have more losses in their UFC career. And so although Leonardo dropped down to 8-3 in her MMA career, it ain't that half bad. It really isn't. Also, she is someone who came from the Dana White Contender Series, and she signed her contract recently. So, you know what? She's still a fairly new face in the world of the UFC. So I expect to see more from both of these women down the line. And so this coming in from MMA Junkie, Joselyne Edwards, she reflected on her successful UFC debut when she dominated Wu Yanan for a decision victory. She goes on to say, "I can't deny it. She is a really strong fighter. She has more experience than I do. There are little details I must adjust, but I feel really comfortable about my performance. I try to push her and keep moving forward because I studied her, and I know that when you pressure her, she tends to go back, so that's what I did. This was my UFC debut, and I want to keep myself humble. I know bantamweight is a hard division, but at the same time, I know I have enough skills to give good battles just like I did today." So, a lot of fight fans were indeed very impressed by the performance by Joselyne Edwards. I was impressed by it, and she was right in this bout here. She pressured Yana Wu, she made her go backwards, and although there are moments where Yana Wu was able to go land in some good clean counter strikes And in many occasions here, the defensive aspect of Joselyne Edwards was the worst part about her fight game. Her offense is really darn good. She's able to unload a flurry of offense and is incredibly aggressive, fighting at a high pace, at a high volume, consistently through all 3 rounds of action. Oh yeah, no, so in her fight against Yana Wu, yeah, so the fight did end up by decision, but through all 3 rounds of action, the fight stats say that the volume of strikes was pretty much near equal through all 3 rounds, which meant both these women were essentially cardio freaks in this bout here, and just didn't let up at all in maintaining that high velocity, that high volume of striking. So I'm impressed by Joselyne Edwards, and I still believe this. She made it herself, that the bantamweight division is very difficult. And considering that what I saw from Joselyne Edwards, and although I know she does have a grappling background, I'm just not that confident in seeing her compete at bantamweights. I'm not. I think Yana Wu and Joselyne Edwards, I think if we're going to see the best versions of them, they got to compete at flyweight. Compete at flyweight because their size and stature, compared relatively to the other women who compete at the fight division, I think they're too small. They're very quick, but they lack that punching power or that striking power. And I can see both women being thrown around and tossed around by these bigger bantamweight grapplers, because their grappling here, it wasn't all that good. And considering how low level of a grappler both these women are, it was very like, even Daniel Cormier, Dan Hardy, when they're watching the grappling, they're like, ugh, wow, these women, they're just going right at it. They're going right at it, high flurry of strikes, but they're not really, doing a good job grappling. Like, the only instance where it looked like Joselyne Edwards knew what she was doing when she was fighting defensively was when she was on the ground and attempted the triangle. But even then, Yana Wu, who, by the way, is a very inexperienced fighter, they're both only in their early 20s. So they're both still developing their fighting styles. They're not the very best at striking. They're not the very best at grappling. But due time, I can imagine 3-4 years down the line, both these women are going to go do great things in their run competing for the UFC. And so as a reminder, we do have a UFC pay-per-view card coming back to Fight Island this Saturday, June 23, going to Fight Island, a main event, Dustin Poirier vs. Conor McGregor. We got 3 women's MMA bouts happening in this card. In the main card, we got 2 MMA bouts, Jessica Ai versus Joanne Calderwood, 2 women trying to become top contenders yet again for the women's fight division. We have 2 prospects in Marina Rodriguez and Amanda Ribas, who are 2 fighters who are capable of stealing the show. Also in the prelims, we got Juliana Pena versus Sarah McMahon happening in the women's bantamweight division. And so my picks are, for the pay-per-view events, I'm saying Juliana Pena is going to win her bouts. I am predicting Amanda Ribas defeating Marina Rodriguez. I think Amanda Ribas just has a slight edge over Marina Rodriguez in terms of the grappling. And for Jessica Ai versus Joanne Calderwood, this will be a very close one, but I was really impressed by Jessica Ai's recent performance, and I really was let down by Joanne Calderwood when she fought against Jennifer Maia. So I'm picking Jessica Ai to go win that bout. I'll be doing a review of UFC 257 on next week's podcast. I'm excited for the show, and I can't wait to see it. And then following that, we have UFC Fight Night, Overeem versus Volkov. That card has not been established yet. They're still working on it. But whatever happens, you know what? The UFC has had a good run of having some good shows in January. The return to Fight Island has been awesome, and I can't wait to see more MMA action. So with that being said, all I gotta say is thank you. Thank you for listening to the GSMC Women's MMA Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask you, please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That really helps us. Also, if you can please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you, and have a good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Women's Mixed Martial Arts Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.